Ladies and gentlemen, as we start our service today, I'm going to kindly ask that we turn off or silence all cell phones, electronic devices. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining as we come together to honor the life and the legacy of David Weinraub, a beloved husband, brother, son, father, Zadie, and compassionate soul. In the Jewish tradition, we respond to death by reciting these three words, which mean praised is the judge of truth. These words remind us that as human beings, we understand so little of the way that the universe works. Why do some people die while others live? Only God knows. In embracing the mystery of the universe, even when it seems unfair or confusing, we halt ourselves before we become angry or bitter or depressed. We begin the process of letting go, and we open our hearts to grieving. I'll invite you to repeat after me, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God gives and God takes. Praised be the name of God. For thousands of years, Jews have taken comfort in the words of Psalm 23, which reminds us that even in moments of grief, the divine stands with us, guiding us towards comfort and renewal. Even as we lay this soul to rest today, God restores our souls in life. I'll invite you to open these booklets to page 3. We'll begin by reciting together in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Bi'inot asher yarbitzeni, Al mei menuchot yinahaleini. Nafshi yeshoveh, Nafshi yeshoveh, Yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begates al mavet, lo yirara ki ata imadi, shivtecha mishantecha, shivtecha mishantecha, Hemayinachamoni. Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, neged zorerai. Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, kol sirevaya. Ach tov v'chesed, yerdefoni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, leorech yamim. I'll now call up David's son, Mitch, to share some memories about his dad.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming. It's great to see everybody, even if it's on a sad day. Let's see, so as sad as today is, I'm trying to be grateful about all the things that Dad was able to be and do in his 85 years. He was so many things that it's almost too long a list. However, I'm going to try to get through it anyway, so sorry. Of course, he was a son and a brother twice, a father twice, plus 2 daughters-in-law, a husband twice, first to our mom, Phyllis, and then to Cheryl, who loved each other deeply right up until the end, and of course, a Zadie many times. But he was also a star athlete, a college football player, an umpire, and a coach to my brother and I, who he tried unsuccessfully to teach a curveball for I don't know how many years, but neither of us ever got it. He was a teacher who loved to impart knowledge in everything from phys ed to history to education to politics to the right play to call on a third and short. He was also a student, a soldier, a principal, a fellowship recipient, a college professor, and a doctor, even though his mom constantly reminded him it was the wrong kind of doctor. Professionally, he was a bulletin truck driver, he was a summer pool manager, he was a fundraiser, he was a real estate investor, he was a salesman of everything from life insurance to high-tech flight simulators. He was a politician, a candidate, an author, a novelist, a video producer, and an entrepreneur. As a person, he was also a wild child and a troublemaker and a rabble-rouser. Right through last fall, when he caused all kinds of trouble trying to convince the Jewish community that the Republican candidate for president was a fascist and that fascists always get around to coming after the Jews. As a sports fan, he lived to see 2 things he never thought would happen in his lifetime: the Eagles winning a Super Bowl twice, and Temple beating Penn State in football, sadly only once. While he was deeply saddened that he outlived his baby sister and most of his good friends from back in the day, he was thrilled that he was able to meet and play with his 4 granddaughters, seeing 2 bat mitzvahs and lots of graduations, concerts, recitals, and playtime. Of course, to us he was Dad, through arguments and celebrations, hurt feelings and hugs, and just hanging out watching sports, he was Dad. What I'll miss most is our Sunday afternoon talks about football, and politics, and whatever else was the news of the day. But I don't think it would be appropriate to talk about Fizzy without including an A.B. and Becky joke, as Dad was prone to deliver on just about every occasion. Warning, it's a bad one, but most of them are, and frankly, there weren't a whole lot of clean ones to choose from. So in this one, A.B. and Becky go to a gigantic shopping mall, and after shopping all day, Becky realizes that she's lost track of her husband. After searching all over, she can't find him, and she calls him frantically and says, "A.B., where are you?" she says. "I've looked everywhere." "Becky," he says, "do you remember that jewelry store we visited years ago, and there was that pair of diamond earrings that you fell in love with, and I said one day I would get them for you?" And she says, "Yes, A.B., I remember." He says, "Well, I'm at the sports bar next to that store." I figured that was kind of along his lines of jokes, so that was good. And I think there's at least one more A.B. and Becky joke in the lineup here today, so just to keep everybody on their toes. We never really know how much we've changed the world, but Dad spent his whole life trying. And I know that the world would be a much better place if more people like David Fizzy Weinraub were in it. Thank you. I love you, Dad. Sorry. Thank you. And then I think we're going to call up my brother Ben to say a few words.
What can I say that would do him justice? My prose certainly wouldn't live up to his standard. He loved family. When he did a DNA test, when they were first available, he said that the bloodline originated in Tunisia, which made sense, but was fascinated that it said something like 1% Irish. Enough to put it in one of his many books claiming that the main character, Ben, made a stop there on the way to fighting the Germans in World War II. More on that later. Of course, we could chronicle his life through the many stories that he told, usually over and over again, starting with his mother, Kitty, a homemaker, his father, Ben, who worked with his 4 brothers, Philip, Herman, Henry, Eddie, in the family check-cashing business. He was the oldest of 3 siblings, Michael, Mickey to family, and Karen, 10 years his junior, which we lost this past year suddenly. Depending upon his mood, he grew up at F in the Boulevard or Sears in the Boulevard. I guess the earliest story that I heard many times about him was one of the uncles was on the way home from work one day and noticed that there's this crazy kid playing on the bridge over the railroad tracks next to Sears. Of course, when he got closer, squinted a little bit, saw that it was David. Or in his own recollection, in the days that they still took shoplifting seriously, he and the other kids needing a new pickleball, no connection to present-day pickleball for any of you, just cutting a hollow pink ball in half so they could play baseball. They would go into the Sears on the boulevard, and all the kids would run through and create a diversion so they could grab a new ball and keep playing. His teen years would have enough time, we wouldn't have enough time to cover it all, but I'll stick to the most repeated of the stories, namely, as was typical of the day, the check cashing companies had a truck. And one of his uncles was sick one day, and they grabbed him to go out on the truck. Of course, with piles of cash, they were usually armed. One of his uncles handed him a gun and said, "Let's go." It was a pretty uneventful day, fortunately. However, when they got home and shared the story, no one could believe that they didn't give David, of all people, a gun. We can all understand why. Of the same era, he loved to tell a story of one of the days where one of the brothers, asked the other to cover for him in the store, making up some excuse as to why he couldn't do his shift that day. In the early afternoon, they were both a little dumbfounded when they sat down in the movie theater and were surprised to see each other sitting next to themselves. I think that was the start of the ongoing Weinraub work ethic debate. According to my dad, he was the best all-around two-way football player at Olney, which somehow he still needed some help to land a tryout at Temple. I believe, though, through the family doctor that I think donated there, and when he made the team, in those days there were some hazing rituals. In order to, bring him down to size, the upperclassmen decided to shave his head. The next day, he had a class in a large lecture hall. The snooty English professor, as he would describe it, asked that the young man in whatever row remove his hat. Dad suggested that he should not do so. But the professor kept insisting. Finally, he did so, and there was apparently so much chaos that ensued, the class needed to be canceled, which is how he got his nickname Fizzy, which he had till the end of his time. His friends from college, mostly gone at this point, that I knew, growing up as uncles, that you could be about as close to being so without being blood. Uncle Donnie, Uncle Howard, etc. Friendships that lasted well into his 80s. His favorite practice story was when they were scrimmaging one day at the end of practice, there was a berm on the side of the field. He concocted a play, being David, the end of one play to dive behind the berms that no one noticed. The following play, his plan was, he's going to pop up 20 yards behind the defense and they're going to throw him the ball. Never won much for rules. They did this, it worked to a perfect Temple tee, except for the fact that at about the 10-yard line, as he ran for the end zone, his pants were loose and fell down to his ankles, and he was piled on about a yard short of the goal line. Despite this, after a year, he was a scholarship player, which required him to be a phys ed major, to which he came to the most repeated story of all. As he tells it, the coach was a racist and a bigot and wouldn't let the black guy or the Jewish guy on the field. So he sat on the bench for games. I wasn't there. I can't attest to this. But he sat on the bench with Bill Cosby. After he graduated, Cosby was older but went into the Army. The first game the next season was against Hofstra. Just call out to the Long Island cousins. Afterwards, they were supposed to go to dinner, except no one could find Cosby. My father went into the locker room, being the calm-mannered person that he is, found Cosby sitting in his uniform. Cosby looked at him and said, "I quit." He said, "So what? Let's go to dinner." He said, "I quit the team, I quit school, I quit everything." His famous advice, which of course now everyone agrees with, but for a few decades there, not so much, was stay in school and you have the rest of your life to be a comedian. Cosby quit that day, never earned a degree. He had just graduated, and that next summer he went down the shore with some of his buddies. At a party, he met a woman named Phyllis, who lived with a bunch of her girlfriends. When he decided that he was interested, he went to the beach to find the group of girls the next day, which I think a lot of us have, memories of doing similar. Of course, when he found the group of girls, Phyllis was not with them. He inquired and found out that Phyllis didn't like the beach. And I'll leave that to summarize the rest of the relationship. Most of you know the horrible story of how I got my name. About a month before I was born, my father, who was then just shy of 30, and his father was working in the store. The brothers rotated. Each day one covered the store. And there was some guy who wasn't from the neighborhood, which in those days meant more than any two forms of ID these days, whether it had a star at the top or not of the driver's license. 5 days later, when it was his turn to run the store again, the same guy came back and shot and killed him. My father didn't talk much about him other than he ruled with an iron fist, a trait that was certainly passed down to my dad. After teaching and coaching football at West Philly, he, in his own words, decided that he was smart. He got a master's degree from Temple and a master's and PhD from Penn and Wharton, part of a Ford Foundation program. Afterwards, he got a job as a middle school principal in Coatesville, about an hour drive in a 74 Bug with no air conditioning from Cherry Hill, where he moved 6 months before I was born, of course for the better schools, because he and my mother both worked for the Philadelphia School District. Although his favorite line of his mother's was to repeat what she would always tell him was, the more you go to school, the dumber you get. As required in those days, teachers got paid 9 months of the year that they worked. So he created a summer business, cleaning and managing pools. It lined up nicely with the calendar, but maybe not so much with his level of handyman skills. As is told, he was rushing to paint a pool the day before Memorial Day, as one of the painting teams didn't show up. He, of course, started in the deep end and was 95% complete when he slipped and slid down the entire length of the pool and came home covered in blue pool paint, Papa Smurf style. It was a high-rise pool in the city, and he said one of the tenants was sitting out on the balcony watching, and after seeing this, didn't say anything, just did a slow golf clap, which he said was worse than the actual event. Must have been a short time after that he decided that the Weinraubs should not work for others. Pretty sure he knew my brother was starting a new job in Colorado a couple weeks ago, and his timing to disrupt that with the events of the last couple of weeks would be perfect. He left the school district to run his own businesses. Of course, he brought home the wooden paddle with the air holes in it. In those days, corporal punishment was legal in Pennsylvania. He hung it next to the refrigerator. He had a profound effect on our childhood. And if I had $1 for every time I heard, "I'm going to get the paddle," or "wait till your father gets home." However, there were positives as well. I can't think of a Little League baseball or soccer game that he missed. Having played and coached, he wouldn't let my brother or I play Pop Warner football, as he said your body wasn't ready, I guess ahead of his time in that regard. Of course, that didn't stop him from making it known that he knew more than the refs in any sport, even those he never played, even with one eye on the field and the other on a portable TV while sitting in a van in the parking lot watching the Eagles game. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Back to family. Our childhood was fond of memories, visiting his favorite Uncle Mike and Uncle Norman, to pick up prescriptions at his pharmacy or get his taxes done with Mike, both about a 45-minute drive. Things that could have been done locally, or trips to Philly for the Sunday softball game. I remember sitting and watching, and at the end, they'd let us pinch run or occasionally fill in right field or short field if someone had to leave early for an obligation. But it was a fixture in his life for 50-plus years. He even got a local news channel to run a story as the longest-running pickup softball game in the country. A replacement knee, a neck fusion, a shoulder surgery. He would always ask if you're going to be at the field on Sunday. He said his hero was Leon, the guy who pitched until he was 92. To me, it was him who made sure that my brother and I showed up to join him whenever we lived or close by or visited, till the end, even after he hung up his cleats in his 80s. The running joke was, "Will I see you at the field Sunday morning?" He always loved his cousin's club that ran in the family in, I think, mostly the 60s and 70s. Someone can correct me later. When his cousin Donnie had a final one in Atlantic City not long ago, before he sold his beachfront house, he still couldn't help but rib him endlessly for providing Wawa hoagies for the event versus White House subs, which was about the only thing he would wait in line for his entire life. Not saying he wouldn't complain about it or drive down in February to try to avoid it. He was proud that he wasn't as frugal as his cousin Donnie. He didn't like to spend, never impressed with material items. Well, one apple fell close to the tree and one not so much. From the time we were little, he made you consider any purchase carefully, except when it came to convertibles. He preferred the top down in all weather, as long as it wasn't actively raining, and often parked it with the top down and forget about it when it started to rain, regardless of the temperature, and preferably with a stuffed gorilla in the passenger seat, possibly with another kind of mask on just in case you missed the gorilla. The mask often made appearances at any family event while we were growing up. On Tuesday, when he passed, a gloomy day in the morning, the sun came out. Sure, it was his way of saying, "Come on, one last time, let's weekend at Bernie's me in the convertible." Cheryl, his wife of 35 years, put up with all of this and was supportive and a steadying factor in finally calming him down a bit, and certainly using her nursing skill to care for him. She first introduced his beloved birds to him, and she was an even keel and steadied him, and I'm sure gave us decades more to enjoy time with him that we otherwise wouldn't have had. By his own Aunt Joan's opinion, probably about 70 more years, as she told, because the over-under, according to her, was about 15 for David. Being the first in the family to go to college, albeit living at home and taking SEPTA to school, he didn't understand my interest in going to a private school outside of Boston, especially one so costly. However, when he saw that the travel soccer schedule for a Division III school, he gave in. However, as soon as that didn't come to fruition, he suggested multiple times that I come home and go to Penn, which I considered seriously, except he said, "You can live at home like I did." During and after his time returning to the school district of Dean of Discipline at West Philly High, a move that brought his career full circle after entrepreneurial efforts that included the Mall Learning Center, running for mayor of Cherry Hill in a much underfunded campaign that led him to hosting Ronnie and Nancy's campaign visit to the Cherry Hill Mall, computer-assisted instruction, and how to play craps video and practice kit that he sold out its first run at Fortune Offs, and taught the same at the Resorts Casino in Atlantic City. He tried to teach us to be entrepreneurial, swing for the fences. This, again, had a bit of more impact from one of us than the other. He even ended the formal career as the most overqualified gym teacher in Philadelphia. Afterwards, he wrote books, more than a few, educational on how to fix the inner city schools, not so educational ones about all his exploits with his college boys, and even historical fiction regarding the exploits of the main character, Ben. If anyone wants copies, please let us know. I'm sure they're still available. There were more than a few ideas that never got off the ground, no pun intended, like Turd's Bubblegum, that would come in a small toilet-shaped package, of course. He was a VP of a flight simulator company, sold insurance, and what he describes as about 2 weeks, for what he would describe as for about 2 weeks. He really wanted to have a family business and work together with us. So anything that came to mind that involved either of our career choices was fair game. And barely a week went by without a new business suggestion. Speaking for myself, although he never got fully into the real estate business, he did lead me there, as there was a residency requirement when he went back to the Philly schools. He purchased a triplex with the help of his cousin Dennis, also a gym teacher, who picked that business versus cleaning pools. Along with the fact that his friends had all kinds of businesses, professional, otherwise, they all said in the end that they made or saved more money in the real estate than in their actual businesses. He also was proud to have a perfect credit score, although he never hit the mother lode. Always wanted to be ready to finance that next idea that came along, a trait that I try hard to replicate and shows in the Weinraub preference never to take car loans or other loans on depreciating assets. He spent time at the JCC in Cherry Hill, even when having difficulty making it down 300-yard hallway to the gym. He found a way. He made good friends and was able to kibitz with them endlessly. When all his college friends were gone, it was wonderful that many reached out and checked in and really appreciated it. He liked to try to stay in shape and joked in the last few months that he finally got down to his playing weight. He was tough. He liked to wrestle us or any of the grandkids or really anyone, including my mother's cousin Marvin. Despite mine and Mitch's children being all girls, certainly never stopped him. He loved being his 80, Tamira and Hannah Meg and Eden and Ella, as well as Tyler and Madison and Justin and Ben. Speaking as someone who never got to meet either of his grandfathers, it was a blessing to meet and spend time with all of you. He would endlessly ask me, when do I get to see the girls? We would only hope that all of you go after your dreams, take your shots regardless of the risk, and if it ever works out, include family in the rewards. In the last few days, I appreciated all the thoughts and condolences from all of you. The consensus was that he was always the tough one, which is true. Although he loved us very much and told us often in the later years, not sure I ever saw him cry. Clearly more than you could ever say for me. He lived a good life and lived it fully and left us with some great lessons, especially work hard, let your opinions be known, either through letters to the editor, advertisements if necessary, or at least to the ref. So next time you go to a game or even watch TV, let them hear you and think about Dad.
We'll now hear a few words from David's daughter-in-law, Michelle.
Look how tall I can be. I know. Hi. So, I noticed how the boys just left me up here. That's fine. So I've only known my father-in-law for almost 40 years. And I say only because given his ability to have lifelong relationships that Ben so perfectly outlined, it makes me a short timer for many who are part of that very large circle. But during those 40 years, I think I might win for most names given to one man by one young woman who eventually became his first of two daughters-in-law, because I was afraid of him. So not wanting to be rude, and I was so scared when I met him, I first called him Dr. Weinraub. And while I know he not so secretly loved that, he did tell me to call him David. I couldn't do that, so I didn't. I successfully avoided calling him anything, any name, until Mitch and I got married in 1996 and I joined the family. And then I was able to call him different things. But at our wedding, my very, very Philly dad made sure that a very southern bartender, we were married in Louisville, Kentucky, where my folks are from, broke the happy hour rules by commanding this poor bartender, who was probably 21, to give my new daughter her beer after I'd literally been told by the bartender that they were closed for happy hour at our wedding. And he was not having that, and I was in a wedding gown. And he made sure, and I just remember thinking, oh, he's got me. He has got me. So ever since that fateful moment, he became Fizzy, Dad, and eventually Zadie. And I'm pretty sure that being called Zadie or Zadie Fizzy, was his favorite name of all. And this coming from a city kid who earned a doctorate from Penn, no less. Sorry. Although he was the absolute master, where's John, of the unfiltered thought, that often became words out loud and often pointed out to him by several of us, but memorably by John at a Hanukkah party in the 90s, where later in that evening we would get engaged. Dad was also incredibly contemplative. He read voraciously and was always thinking long and hard about what he read and saw, and Mitchell and Ben certainly take after that in every way. But he would often develop his own hypotheses on the subjects he was reading, and he was so good at teaching when he read, that he would share that with us. And I think I sometimes learned more from the books he read than any other way I could ingest that material. And I learned a lot about history from him and a lot about writing. He had hundreds of book ideas. He could have lived to be 1,000 years and still wouldn't have exhausted all of his ideas, I don't think. I know that both Mitch and Ben shared with you his amazing, albeit sometimes very hard life, and also about all the jobs he held, created, or talked his way into over the course of his life. I truly believe, though, that his absolute favorite job was grandfather, was Zadie. Zadie to his 4 amazing granddaughters and his bonus grandchildren from Cheryl. He just adored doing that. And as strict as he was, and my dad is the same way, a very strict father, and the absolute opposite in terms of being a grandfather. Whatever you want, you can have, which I loved. He was a man's man. He would tell you, even the girls, rub some dirt on it, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And I love that Benji mentioned the paddle, because I said, do you want the paddle with the air holes or not? But the minute he first became Zadie, to what would be twice as many girls as this boy Dad had, he was calmer, he was patient, he laughed more easily, and he became to me, very outwardly sentimental. The girls, Mitch and I, have super fond memories of him playing for hours in the pool with Mira and Hannah Meg, both at Kingscroft and when he would come to Colorado. Although he hated waiting in line for anything, as Benji alluded to too. He did it when they wanted to go to the park or the zoo or a museum. Okay, we never made him go to Sesame Place or Six Flags, but that's only because we did not have bail money. Although Dad loathed finding parking in Center City, he did it for his city girls, Eden and Ella. I know it would go without saying, but those 4 girls and Cheryl's beautiful grandchildren were the lights of his life in the past 25 years. He was tremendously proud of them all, and for being the ultimate boy dad, he readily became a girl's Zadie without hesitation. My favorite memories of Dad include many of the stories you've already heard from the boys, but I also loved Seders at the Kingscroft Townhouse. One year, Dad read through the service so quickly that we dubbed it the FedEx Seder. Dad was also banned from watching Eagles games at Mitch's and my first townhouse on Apley Court for at least a year. Shout out to our friends who are here who spent all those Sundays with us. He threw something at a vertical blind and it snapped in 2, and it was a condo, and we're like, we don't have money for this. And so he was not allowed to watch games with us for about a year, but then we let him back in. I loved going to the pub with him and Grandmom. We have some amazing pictures through the years with the family as it grew and changed. But someone who worked there whenever we were there would remember him and say, hey, Fizzy. Last and most memorable to me is how easily he showed how proud he was and how much he loved Cheryl and Phyllis and his sons and me and Brooke, his stepdaughters Lynette and Marlene, and of course the grandchildren as he got older. He was always ready with I love yous on the phone and in person. He always gave me the biggest hugs. He did not care that he had to bend down, which I know caused him discomfort. Truly. And almost always, he took that hugging moment to whisper in my ear something special just for me. Either that he was proud of me and my work, how proud he was of his granddaughters, and every time we hugged, he would thank me. He would thank me for the gift of our family and for taking good care of his son. I will miss those hugs most of all, but I have banked enough in my memories to last a lifetime. I said this to Jen and to Karen, Scott, when everybody came in, and to the Thompsons. I just want you to take a moment to reflect on the beautiful relationship that the cousins have on every side of the family. That was so important to Dad, right? And he would, like Benji talked about, Cousins Club, there would be reunions. It was absolutely an expectation and not one we disliked. We loved it, that we would be at each other's mitzvahs and weddings and baby namings and Brits, Milot, and he would be so happy and was so happy. And in fact, he and I talked about this last time I was here last month, that he's so happy the cousins have created this next level tradition. And Mira cares for some of the Thompson grandchildren, and the girls just love each other so much. I just really appreciate, and I'm so grateful when you guys take the time to be together, whether it's a sad day like today or a happy memory, which is also today. And so please continue that. Okay? All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mira, or Miriam. Yeah.
I'll now call up David's beloved granddaughter, Miriam, to share a few memories as well.
I also get the stool. Yay. So I'm Mira, or Miriam, as my Zadie like to call me, and I'm the eldest of us 4 granddaughters. So I'm doing a little representation of all of us right now because not all of us are of speaking age quite yet. Of all the things that we could all count on when it came to our Zadie, possibly the most important to me was that given any amount of time, he'd find a way to make us laugh. Grown, or most of the time, a combination of the two. Now, I'm sure many were familiar with his famous, or should I say infamous, sense of humor. You might have even been a witness to some of his more, how should I say this, colorful jokes. But one of the most special things that sense of humor brought me was an ending that left me smiling. Whether it was an email chain back and forth about political organizing ideas one of us had, a birthday or holiday call, or a drive to and from the train station, almost all our time together would always end the same way, with me smiling at something he'd said or done. We could have been having a dense and complicated conversation about anything under the sun, and somehow he would find a way to crack a joke, make a face, pull out a costume, or sing a song to make me laugh. To me, that was exactly who my Zadie was. He was someone who wasn't afraid of the tough stuff and had experienced a lot of it, but also knew the true power of levity. His devotion to making us kids laugh could never be rivaled. And so to honor him in one of the ways that I can, not to pull this out again, but I promise we didn't plan this. I'm going to tell another A.B. and Becky joke because it was one of the ways that he showed all of us how much he cared. And it was one of the ways that he made sure that no matter what was happening to us, where we were going next in our journey, or whatever we were going to face next, that little bit of laughter, that smile would be with us for a really long time afterwards. So, A.B. and Becky were in the kitchen, and A.B. said, "Becky, we've almost been married 80 years. Tell me, was I the only one?" Becky replied, "Yes, you were the only one. The rests were 9 and 10s. He sent me that joke after a phone call we'd had where he was vouching to run my campaign if I ever wanted to run for political office one day. And at the end of the conversation, I'd said, "Zadie, I really don't want to run for office. That sounds terrible." And he goes, "Yeah, it was, but you should absolutely do it." Which is pretty much a good summary of who he was, struggling through the hard stuff and making it fun anyway. So that's all for me, but I'll pass it along to my little sister, who's gonna sing for us.
I gotta do a sound check real fast. Sorry, y'all. It's an Airbnb ad. Hold on.
All right, so that's one pair of glasses with
Now Warby
prescription lenses, plus anti-reflective.
I'm not gonna use the mic because I don't. I'm the singer of the grandchildren. This is a little out of my genre, but it's for my Zadie. Let's see if it plays. Hold on. There we go.
Say
If there's one theme that we've heard today, it's the fact that David always did it his way, right? Coming up with business ideas, getting a PhD, writing books, coming up with wild plans and schemes, and always showing an incredible amount of love for his family. And I think there's just something so beautiful about someone who could be serious enough to get a PhD and to write books, and also silly enough to wear a gorilla mask in, it sounds like, many situations, actually, and to pick someone up from the airport in a Homer Simpson costume, just because he really did it his way. There's no replacing a person of wisdom. There are mines for silver and places where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is smelted from the rock. V'hachochma ma'ayin timatzeh, ve'eze makom binah. But wisdom, where can it be found? And what is the source of understanding? There is no replacing a person of wisdom. We'll now say the traditional prayer as we send David's soul into the unknown, as we send him into eternal rest. El malei rachamim, shochein bamromim, hamtzeh menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim u'tehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat David ben Pinchas, halach le'olamo, began eden tehei menuchato, Ana bal harachamim, hasdirehu beseter knafecha leolamim, utzror bitzror hachaim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. El malei rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of David ben Pinchas, David Weinraub, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. We'll close the service in a moment with the Kaddish Yatom. After Kaddish, I'll invite folks to sit back down and to remain seated as the family is dismissed. Folks are invited to the Kaminsky's restaurant for lunch and to share additional memories. If you need directions to Kaminsky's, the funeral directors can assist you on the way out. We turn now back to the white booklet. You can open up to the very middle, pages 20 and 21. I'll invite people to rise and to join me for the mourner's Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon ufchayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam ul'olmei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. You can have a seat. May David's memory be for a blessing.
Directions as well on the podium where the register stand was. So if you'd like directions, also with contribution information. stay seated as well. I'm going to dismiss the chapel